Maria Santos had always believed that small gestures could change everything. Standing at 5 feet 2 inches with calloused hands from years of nursing work, she never imagined that a simple handshake would alter the course of her life forever. The morning of September 15th started like any other at St. Catherine's Medical Center in downtown Washington, D.C., where Maria had worked for 12 years as a pediatric nurse. The hospital corridors buzzed with their usual activity as Maria made her rounds, checking on young patients who had come to trust her gentle touch and warm smile. She had developed a reputation among her colleagues for going above and beyond, often staying late to comfort a crying child or explain complex medical procedures to worried parents in terms they could understand. Her supervisor, Janet Morrison, frequently praised Maria's dedication, though she worried that the young nurse pushed herself too hard. That particular morning, Maria noticed something unusual happening in the hospital's main lobby. Security guards were positioning themselves at strategic points, and maintenance staff were polishing surfaces that already gleamed. When she asked one of the security officers about the increased activity, he mentioned that an important diplomatic event was scheduled for later that day. The hospital was hosting a ceremony to commemorate a new international medical exchange program. Maria thought little of it as she continued her duties. Her focus remained on 7-year-old Timothy, a patient recovering from a complicated surgery who had been asking for his favorite storybook. During her lunch break, she decided to visit the hospital's small gift shop to see if they had a copy. The shop was located near the main entrance, and as she browsed the limited selection of books, she could see workers setting up chairs and a small podium in the lobby. The afternoon brought an unexpected change in the hospital's atmosphere. Word spread quickly among the staff that Ambassador Hassan al-Rashid from the United Arab Emirates would be arriving soon to officially launch the medical exchange program. This initiative would allow nurses and doctors from both countries to share knowledge and techniques, potentially saving thousands of lives through improved medical practices. Ambassador al-Rashid had a distinguished career in diplomacy and was known for his progressive views on international cooperation in healthcare. His own daughter had been treated successfully for a rare condition at a hospital in Boston several years earlier, an experience that had shaped his commitment to medical diplomacy. The exchange program represented months of careful negotiations between governments and medical institutions. As the appointed time approached, Maria found herself finishing her rounds near the main lobby. She could see the impressive gathering of officials, hospital administrators, and medical professionals dressed in their finest attire. The contrast between this formal assembly and her simple scrubs was stark, but Maria had never been one to feel intimidated by such differences. The ambassador arrived precisely on schedule, accompanied by a small entourage that included his chief of staff, a medical attaché, and his personal physician. His presence commanded immediate attention as he moved through the lobby, greeting various officials with practiced diplomatic grace. Hospital CEO, Dr. Richard Blackwood personally escorted the ambassador, introducing him to department heads and senior medical staff. During the formal presentation, Ambassador al-Rashid spoke eloquently about the importance of medical cooperation across cultural boundaries. He emphasized how diseases and medical challenges knew no borders, and how sharing knowledge could benefit patients worldwide. His words resonated with many in the audience who had dedicated their careers to healing others. As the ceremony concluded, the ambassador began making his way through the crowd, personally thanking individuals for their contributions to the medical field. Hospital administrators had carefully orchestrated this meet-and-greet session, ensuring that key personnel would have opportunities to interact with the distinguished visitor. Maria watched from a respectful distance, still thinking about Timothy and the other children in her care. She had never been starstruck by famous people or political figures, but she found herself genuinely impressed by the ambassador's obvious passion for improving healthcare accessibility. His commitment seemed authentic rather than merely political. The crowd began to thin as people returned to their duties or departed for other engagements. Maria was preparing to head back to the pediatric ward when she noticed the ambassador walking in her direction. Their eyes met across the lobby, and he approached her with the same warm demeanor he had shown to everyone else. Without hesitation, Maria extended her hand in greeting. It was a natural gesture for her, the same way she introduced herself to nervous parents or welcomed new colleagues. Her handshake was firm and genuine, accompanied by her characteristic warm smile. She introduced herself simply as Maria, a nurse in the pediatric department. The ambassador seemed genuinely pleased to meet someone from the front lines of patient care. They began discussing the challenges and rewards of working with children, a conversation that revealed their shared belief in the importance of treating young patients with special care and attention. Maria found herself describing some of the innovative techniques she had learned for helping children cope with medical procedures. What neither of them realized was that this simple interaction was being observed by several people in the lobby. Some hospital administrators noticed with approval that their staff was engaging positively with the distinguished visitor. However, others in the crowd viewed the scene quite differently. Dr. Margaret Stevens, the hospital's assistant chief of staff, had been watching the exchange with growing disapproval. She prided herself on maintaining proper protocol and social hierarchies within the medical institution. In her view, a pediatric nurse approaching an ambassador so casually was inappropriate and potentially embarrassing to the hospital. Dr. Stevens was not alone in her reaction. Several other senior staff members exchanged meaningful glances as they observed Maria's friendly conversation with Ambassador al-Rashid. Their whispered comments suggested that they viewed her behavior as presumptuous and socially inappropriate. The conversation between Maria and the ambassador continued for several more minutes, covering topics ranging from pediatric care techniques to the challenges of working in high-stress medical environments. Both seemed genuinely engaged in the discussion, with the ambassador asking thoughtful questions about Maria's experiences and sharing his own observations about healthcare delivery in different countries. As their conversation naturally concluded, Ambassador al-Rashid expressed his appreciation for Maria's dedication to her patients and her insights into pediatric care. He mentioned that nurses like her were the backbone of any healthcare system, a comment that clearly came from genuine respect rather than diplomatic politeness. After the ambassador departed with his entourage, Maria returned to the pediatric ward feeling energized by the encounter. She had found it refreshing to speak with someone who truly understood the importance of healthcare workers at every level. The conversation had reinforced her own sense of purpose in her chosen profession. However, the aftermath of her interaction with Ambassador al-Rashid would prove to be far more complicated than Maria could have imagined. Within hours of the ceremony's conclusion, word of her inappropriate behavior had spread through certain circles within the hospital administration. The criticism came from multiple sources, each with their own perspective on what had transpired. Some felt that Maria had been presumptuous in approaching such a high-ranking diplomat. Others suggested that her casual manner had been disrespectful to the formal nature of the occasion. A few even questioned whether a pediatric nurse had any business engaging in discussions with international officials. Dr. Stevens took it upon herself to address what she saw as a breach of protocol. She scheduled a meeting with Maria for the following morning, intending to discuss appropriate professional boundaries and social awareness in formal settings. Her approach reflected a traditional view of institutional hierarchy that left little room for informal interactions across social or professional levels. The news of this impending disciplinary meeting spread quickly through the hospital's informal communication networks. Many of Maria's colleagues were shocked and confused by the administration's reaction. They knew Maria as a dedicated professional who had never caused any problems or conflicts during her years of service. Nurse Patricia Williams, who had worked alongside Maria for 8 years, was particularly outraged by the situation. She had witnessed Maria's interaction with the ambassador and saw nothing inappropriate or disrespectful in her colleague's behavior. If anything, Patricia felt that Maria had represented the nursing profession admirably during the encounter. The divide in opinions created tension throughout the hospital. Younger staff members generally supported Maria, viewing the criticism as an outdated adherence to rigid social hierarchies. Older, more traditional administrators maintained that proper protocol should have been observed regardless of the ambassador's apparent enjoyment of the conversation. As word of the controversy reached the nursing staff, many began to rally around Maria. They saw the criticism as unfair and potentially discriminatory, reflecting broader issues about how different levels of hospital staff were valued and respected. The situation threatened to expose deeper problems within the institution's culture and management approach. Maria herself remained largely unaware of the storm brewing around her actions. She had returned to her duties with renewed enthusiasm, carrying the ambassador's encouraging words about the importance of nursing care. She continued to focus on her patients, particularly Timothy, who was showing excellent progress in his recovery. The contrast between Maria's dedication to her work and the administrative controversy swirling around her could not have been more stark. While she concentrated on providing compassionate care to sick children, others debated whether her simple gesture of friendship had been appropriate for someone of her social and professional standing. The situation was further complicated by the fact that Ambassador al-Rashid had clearly enjoyed his conversation with Maria and had expressed genuine appreciation for her insights. This positive reaction from the very person who was supposedly offended by her behavior undermined the criticism being leveled against her. As the day drew to a close, Maria remained focused on her responsibilities, unaware that her simple act of extending a handshake had triggered a complex web of reactions that would soon transform her life in ways she could never have anticipated. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only her own character, but also the values and priorities of the institution where she had dedicated over a decade of her professional life. The events of that September afternoon had set in motion a chain of consequences that would ultimately reveal the true character of everyone involved, from the humble nurse who believed in treating everyone with equal respect to the powerful figures who would soon be forced to choose between protocol and human dignity. Maria arrived at work the next morning with her usual quiet confidence, carrying the small storybook she had finally purchased for Timothy from a bookstore near her apartment. The early morning light filtered through the hospital windows as she made her way to the pediatric ward, greeting the night shift nurses with her characteristic warmth. She had no indication that her world was about to change dramatically. The call came at 8:30 a.m. Janet Morrison's voice on the intercom was unusually formal as she requested Maria's presence in the administrative offices immediately. Maria assumed it was routine paperwork, or perhaps a discussion about staffing schedules. She asked her colleague Sarah to keep an eye on her patients and made her way to the elevator, still carrying Timothy's book. The administrative wing of St. Catherine's Medical Center had always felt different from the rest of the hospital. The carpeted hallways and polished wood furniture created an atmosphere that seemed removed from the urgency and compassion that defined the patient care areas. Maria had rarely had reason to visit these offices during her 12 years of service, and she felt somewhat out of place in her practical scrubs among the business attire of the administrative staff. Margaret Stevens was waiting in Conference Room B, accompanied by Human Resources Director Patricia Coleman and Assistant Administrator James Mitchell. The formal arrangement of chairs around the polished table immediately signaled that this was not a casual meeting. Maria took the offered seat, placing Timothy's storybook beside her folder. Dr. Stevens began with a lengthy preamble about professional standards and appropriate conduct in formal settings. She spoke about the importance of maintaining institutional dignity and respecting social protocols, especially when interacting with distinguished visitors. Her tone was measured but carried an unmistakable undertone of disapproval. The specific criticism, when it finally came, struck Maria like a physical blow. She was being formally reprimanded for inappropriate conduct during the previous day's ceremony. The charges included approaching a high-ranking diplomat without proper authorization, engaging in extended conversation that exceeded her role as a staff nurse, and failing to maintain appropriate professional boundaries in a formal setting. Maria listened in stunned silence as Dr. Papa Stevens outlined the hospital's position. According to the administration, her behavior had been presumptuous and potentially embarrassing to the institution. Several witnesses had reported feeling uncomfortable watching a nurse engage so familiarly with Ambassador al-Rashid. The implication was clear. Maria had overstepped her place in the hospital's social hierarchy. The Human Resources Director explained that a formal letter of reprimand would be placed in Maria's personnel file. While she would not lose her job over this incident, any future infractions of professional protocol would result in more serious disciplinary action. Maria was also informed that she would be required to attend sensitivity training focused on appropriate professional conduct in formal settings. As the meeting progressed, Maria found her voice. She explained that she had simply responded naturally when the ambassador approached her, treating him with the same respect and courtesy she showed to everyone. She emphasized that their conversation had been entirely professional, and that the ambassador had seemed genuinely interested in discussing pediatric care practices. Dr. Stevens dismissed Maria's explanation with barely concealed impatience. She insisted that Maria's intentions were irrelevant compared to the impact of her actions on the hospital's reputation. The message was clear. Regardless of how the ambassador had responded to the interaction, Maria had violated unwritten rules about social positioning and professional boundaries. The meeting concluded with stern warnings about future conduct and expectations for Maria's behavior in any formal hospital events. She was instructed to return to her duties and reflect seriously on the lessons of this experience. As Maria left the conference room, she felt a crushing weight of humiliation and confusion. Word of Maria's reprimand spread through the hospital with remarkable speed. Book of a City of Passenger. The nursing staff reacted with a mixture of outrage and disbelief. Many had witnessed the interaction between Maria and Ambassador al-Rashid and saw nothing inappropriate in her conduct. If anything, they felt she had represented the nursing profession with dignity and professionalism. Patricia Williams was among the first to seek out Maria after the disciplinary meeting. She found her colleague in the break room staring at Timothy's storybook with tears in her eyes. Patricia had seen many injustices during her nursing career, but this situation seemed particularly cruel and senseless. The conversation between the two nurses revealed the depth of Maria's hurt and confusion. She had always prided herself on treating everyone with equal respect and kindness, regardless of their social status or position. The suggestion that this fundamental aspect of her character was somehow inappropriate challenged her most basic beliefs about human dignity and professional conduct. As news of the reprimand spread, it became clear that the hospital staff was divided along predictable lines. Nurses, orderlies, and younger doctors largely supported Maria, viewing the disciplinary action as unfair and potentially discriminatory. Senior administrators and some older physicians maintained that proper protocol had been violated and that consequences were appropriate. The controversy gained additional complexity when several staff members began sharing their own experiences of similar treatment. Nurse Jennifer Hayes recalled being criticized for speaking too casually with a board member during a hospital fundraising event. Orderly Miguel Rodriguez mentioned being reprimanded for joking with a visiting health department official. A pattern emerged suggesting that the hospital's administration had long-standing issues with informal interactions across hierarchical lines. Dr. Patricia Morrison, the chief of pediatrics, found herself in a particularly difficult position. As Maria's ultimate supervisor, she was expected to support the administrative decision while also maintaining the morale and effectiveness of her nursing staff. Dr. Taro. Morrison had always valued Maria as one of her most capable and dedicated nurses, and she privately questioned the wisdom of the disciplinary action. The situation became more complicated when Ambassador al-Rashid's staff contacted the hospital that afternoon. The call was routine, expressing the ambassador's appreciation for the previous day's ceremony and his positive impressions of the hospital's commitment to international medical cooperation. The caller specifically mentioned the ambassador's enjoyment of his conversation with various staff members, particularly praising the insights shared by a pediatric nurse named Maria. This information created an uncomfortable situation for the hospital administration. The very person they claimed had been disrespected by Maria's conduct was actively praising her professionalism and expertise. Doctors old. Stevens found herself in the awkward position of having to acknowledge the ambassador's positive feedback while maintaining that disciplinary action had been necessary. The contradiction between the ambassador's satisfaction and the hospital's criticism of Maria became a topic of intense discussion among the staff. Many began to question whether the real issue was Maria's conduct or the administration's own discomfort with informal interactions across social boundaries. Meanwhile, Maria struggled to focus on her work while dealing with the emotional impact of the reprimand. The formal letter of discipline felt like a permanent stain on her professional reputation, despite her 12 years of exemplary service. She found herself second-guessing every interaction with hospital visitors and administrators, worried about triggering additional criticism. Timothy noticed Maria's subdued mood during her afternoon rounds. The perceptive 7-year-old asked if she was sad about something, and Maria managed a reassuring smile while acknowledging that she was dealing with some work difficulties. Timothy's innocent concern provided a reminder of why Maria had chosen nursing as her profession: the opportunity to provide comfort and care to those who needed it most. The story of Maria's reprimand began to reach beyond the hospital walls, as staff members shared their frustrations with friends and family members. Social media posts began appearing, carefully worded to avoid specific names but clearly describing a situation where a dedicated nurse had been punished for treating a diplomat with basic human courtesy. Local nursing organizations started receiving inquiries about the situation. The State Nurses Association expressed interest in reviewing the case for potential discrimination or unfair labor practices. professional nursing journals began researching similar incidents at other healthcare facilities, suggesting that Maria's experience might reflect broader systemic issues within hospital hierarchies. The growing attention made hospital administrators increasingly uncomfortable. What had been intended as a quiet disciplinary action was threatening to become a public relations problem. The administration found themselves trying to justify their decision to audiences who saw Maria's conduct as admirable rather than inappropriate. Dr. Blackwood, the hospital CEO, requested a private meeting with Dr. Stevens to discuss the handling of the situation. While he had not been directly involved in the disciplinary decision, he was becoming concerned about the potential impact on the hospital's reputation. The irony that a ceremony celebrating international cooperation had resulted in punishing a staff member for being cooperative was not lost on him. The meeting between Dr. Blackwood and Dr. Stevens revealed fundamental disagreements about institutional values and priorities. Dr. Stevens maintained that clear hierarchical boundaries were essential for proper hospital functioning and that exceptions to protocol could not be tolerated. Dr. Chesaco Blackwood worried that such rigid adherence to social positioning might damage the hospital's progressive image and alienate valuable staff members. As the controversy entered its second day, Maria made a decision that would prove to be pivotal. Rather than accepting the disciplinary action quietly, she decided to formally appeal the reprimand through the hospital's grievance procedure. This decision was encouraged by several colleagues who felt that her case highlighted important issues about fairness and respect within the institution. The formal appeal process required Maria to document her version of events and explain why she believed the disciplinary action was unjustified. Working with Patricia Williams and several other supportive colleagues, Maria began preparing a comprehensive response that addressed not only her specific situation, but also broader questions about professional conduct and human dignity. The appeal document became a powerful statement about Maria's values and professional philosophy. She wrote about her belief that treating everyone with equal respect and courtesy was not just appropriate, but essential for healthcare workers. And so, she argued that her conversation with Ambassador al-Rashid had been entirely professional and had actually enhanced the hospital's reputation by demonstrating the caliber of its nursing staff. News of Maria's appeal spread quickly through the hospital, generating even more support from her colleagues. A petition began circulating, signed by dozens of nurses, doctors, and other staff members who expressed confidence in Maria's professionalism and questioned the appropriateness of the disciplinary action. The petition contained statements from colleagues who had witnessed Maria's interaction with the ambassador and saw nothing inappropriate in her conduct. Several senior nurses wrote detailed testimonials about Maria's character and professionalism, emphasizing her consistent dedication to patient care and her respectful treatment of everyone she encountered. Dr. Morrison found herself under increasing pressure from her nursing staff to take a stronger stand in support of Maria. A delegation of senior nurses requested a meeting to express their concerns about the disciplinary action and its implications for the entire nursing department. The situation was becoming a significant morale issue that threatened to affect patient care quality. The growing support for Maria created additional complications for the hospital administration. What had been presented as a clear-cut case of protocol violation was increasingly being viewed as an unfair targeting of a dedicated employee. The administration found themselves defending a position that seemed increasingly indefensible to many observers. As the second day ended, it became clear that Maria's simple handshake had triggered forces much larger than anyone had anticipated. The controversy was exposing deep-seated tensions within the hospital about hierarchy, respect, and professional conduct. The resolution of Maria's appeal would require the institution to confront fundamental questions about its values and priorities, setting the stage for a confrontation that would determine not just Maria's future, but the character of the hospital itself. The third day brought a development that no one at St. Catherine's Medical Center could have predicted. As Maria arrived for her morning shift, still carrying the weight of uncertainty about her appeal, the hospital's main lobby was once again bustling with security preparations. However, this time the activity had an urgency that differed markedly from the ceremonial atmosphere of 3 days earlier. Emergency vehicles lined the street outside the hospital as news crews began gathering near the main entrance. Word spread quickly through the corridors that Ambassador al-Rashid had been rushed to the hospital during the early morning hours after collapsing at his hotel. The nature of his medical emergency was not immediately clear, but the presence of his security detail and the State Department officials indicated the seriousness of the situation. Maria learned about the ambassador's arrival from Patricia Williams, who had been on duty when the emergency medical team brought him to the hospital. The initial report suggested a possible cardiac event, though doctors were still conducting diagnostic tests to determine the exact cause of his collapse. What was certain was that his condition was serious enough to require immediate intensive care. The irony of the situation was not lost on Maria or her colleagues. The same man whose interaction with her had led to her reprimand was now a patient in the very hospital where she worked. The diplomatic and security implications of treating such a high-profile international figure added layers of complexity to an already challenging medical situation. Dr. Blackwood called an emergency meeting of senior medical staff to coordinate the ambassador's care. The hospital's cardiac team, led by Dr. Elena Rodriguez, took primary responsibility for his treatment while navigating the unique challenges of treating a patient under constant security surveillance. The presence of 6 Secret Service agents in the cardiac intensive care unit created logistical difficulties that the hospital had never before encountered. The security arrangements were unprecedented for St. Catherine's Medical Center. Agent Sarah Mitchell, the lead Secret Service agent, established strict protocols for anyone entering or leaving the cardiac unit. Background checks were required for all medical personnel who would have direct contact with the ambassador, and a secure communication system was installed to coordinate with State Department officials and the ambassador's home country. As the morning progressed, it became clear that Ambassador al-Rashid's condition was more serious than initially thought. The diagnostic tests revealed a complex cardiac arrhythmia that required specialized treatment and careful monitoring. His age and the stress of his diplomatic schedule had contributed to a condition that, while treatable, demanded the highest level of medical expertise and attention. Dr. Jean Rodriguez assembled a team of specialists to manage the ambassador's care, but she faced an unexpected challenge. The ambassador had specifically requested to speak with Maria, the pediatric nurse he had met during the ceremony. When conscious and lucid, he had asked several times about the kind nurse who spoke so beautifully about caring for children. His medical team was puzzled by this request, unaware of their previous interaction. The request created an immediate dilemma for the hospital administration. Maria was still under disciplinary review for her interaction with the ambassador, yet the patient himself was asking to see her. Dr. Stevens found herself in the uncomfortable position of explaining to the medical team why the nurse specifically requested by their patient might not be available to see him. Agent Mitchell, representing the security detail, conducted her own inquiry into why the ambassador was asking for a specific nurse. When she learned about Maria's reputation and the nature of their previous conversation, she saw no security concerns with allowing the meeting. However, the hospital's internal politics created complications that the Secret Service had not anticipated. Dr. Blackwood faced a decision that would test his leadership and the hospital's values. He could deny the ambassador's request based on the ongoing disciplinary proceedings, or he could prioritize patient care and diplomatic relations over internal administrative conflicts. The choice would send a clear message about the hospital's priorities and character. Meanwhile, Maria continued her duties in the pediatric ward, aware of the commotion surrounding the ambassador's care but unsure of her potential role in the situation. Several colleagues had mentioned that the ambassador was asking for her, but she had received no official communication from the administration about any involvement in his care. The breakthrough came when Dr. Rodriguez, frustrated by the administrative obstacles to her patient's requests, directly contacted Maria. As the attending physician, Dr. Rodriguez had the authority to determine what was medically appropriate for her patient, and she believed that fulfilling the ambassador's request for familiar, comforting contact could aid in his recovery. The conversation between Dr. Rodriguez and Maria was illuminating for both women. Maria learned the full extent of the ambassador's condition and his specific requests to see her. Dr. Rodriguez discovered the circumstances surrounding Maria's disciplinary action and was shocked that a nurse with Maria's reputation was being penalized for behavior that the patient himself clearly valued. Dr. Rodriguez made a decision that would prove pivotal to the entire situation. So first, she formally requested Maria's assignment to the ambassador's care team as a consulting nurse specializing in patient comfort and emotional support. This medical decision effectively overrode the administrative obstacles that had been preventing Maria's involvement in the case. The request forced Dr. Blackwood to choose between supporting his medical staff's professional judgment and maintaining the disciplinary stance taken by Dr. Stevens. After consulting with the hospital's legal counsel, who pointed out potential liability issues in denying appropriate medical care to such a high-profile patient, Dr. Blackwood approved Maria's temporary assignment to the cardiac unit. Maria's first meeting with Ambassador al-Rashid since his hospitalization was emotional for both of them. The ambassador, though weakened by his condition, expressed genuine pleasure at seeing her again. He thanked her for their previous conversation, mentioning how much her insights about patient care had meant to him, especially given his own daughter's medical experiences. The conversation revealed something that surprised everyone present, including Agent Mitchell and the medical team. Ambassador al-Rashid explained that Maria's approach during their first meeting had reminded him of the nurses who had cared for his daughter during her illness. Her combination of professional competence and genuine warmth had provided him with a sense of comfort and familiarity in what had been a formal, somewhat intimidating hospital environment. More significantly, the ambassador expressed confusion about learning that Maria had been disciplined for their interaction. He asked Dr. Rodriguez directly whether the hospital administration disapproved of staff members being kind and professional with patients and visitors. His question highlighted the fundamental absurdity of punishing someone for behavior that the supposed victim not only appreciated but specifically sought to continue. Agent Mitchell observed the interaction with professional interest, noting the positive effect that Maria's presence had on the ambassador's vital signs and overall demeanor. From a security perspective, she could see that Maria's calming influence was beneficial to their protectee's health and recovery, making her involvement a security asset rather than a concern. The news of Maria's assignment to the ambassador's care team spread quickly through the hospital, creating a buzz of excitement and vindication among her supporters. Many staff members saw this development as proof that Maria's conduct had been appropriate and professional all along. The fact that the patient himself had specifically requested her services seemed to refute the administration's criticism entirely. Dr. Stevens found herself in an increasingly difficult position as the situation developed. The success of Maria's interactions with the ambassador made the disciplinary action appear misguided and potentially harmful to patient care. Several board members began asking questions about the administration's handling of the situation, particularly given the diplomatic implications of the ambassador's hospitalization. The Secret Service agents, initially focused solely on security concerns, began to appreciate Maria's role in maintaining their protectee's well-being. Agent Mitchell noted in her reports that the ambassador's stress levels decreased significantly when Maria was present, contributing to better medical outcomes and easier security management. The agents began to view Maria as an ally rather than a potential complication. As the ambassador's condition stabilized over the following days, his appreciation for Maria's care became even more evident. He spoke frequently about the quality of the hospital's nursing staff, specifically praising Maria's combination of professional expertise and personal warmth. His positive comments were relayed to State Department officials and his own country's diplomatic personnel. The international attention surrounding the ambassador's care brought additional scrutiny to the hospital's handling of Maria's situation. Diplomatic protocol officers began asking questions about why such an exemplary nurse had been disciplined for behavior that the ambassador clearly valued. The contradiction between the hospital's disciplinary action and the patient's satisfaction became a source of embarrassment for the administration. Media coverage of the ambassador's hospitalization began to include mentions of the exceptional nursing care he was receiving. While patient privacy prevented detailed reporting, diplomatic sources confirmed that the ambassador had specifically praised the professionalism and compassion of the hospital's nursing staff. These positive reports stood in stark contrast to the internal controversy surrounding Maria's treatment. The growing attention forced Dr. Blackwood to convene a special review of Maria's disciplinary case. The review committee included medical staff, administrative personnel, and an external arbitrator from the State Nurses Association. The committee was tasked with examining whether the disciplinary action had been appropriate and whether it should be reversed. The review process revealed the full extent of support for Maria within the hospital community. Dozens of colleagues submitted written statements attesting to her professionalism, competence, and dedication. Patients and their families wrote letters describing the exceptional care they had received from Maria over the years. The documentation painted a picture of an exemplary nurse whose conduct had always been above reproach. More importantly, the review uncovered evidence that the criticism of Maria's behavior had been based more on social prejudices than on legitimate professional concerns. Several witnesses admitted that their discomfort had stemmed from seeing a nurse interact as an equal with a high-ranking diplomat, rather than from any actual inappropriate conduct on Maria's part. The ambassador's continued recovery and his ongoing praise for Maria's care provided the final evidence needed for the review committee's decision. They unanimously concluded that the disciplinary action had been inappropriate and should be completely expunged from Maria's record. Furthermore, they recommended that the hospital review its policies regarding staff interactions with visitors to ensure that such unfair treatment could not occur again. The announcement of the review committee's decision was met with celebration throughout much of the hospital. Maria's colleagues organized a small gathering to mark the vindication of their friend and colleague, though Maria herself remained focused on her patient care responsibilities. The ambassador, upon learning of the committee's decision, expressed his satisfaction that justice had been done. Dr. Stevens, faced with the complete reversal of her disciplinary decision, chose to request a transfer to another position within the hospital system. Her departure was seen by many as an acknowledgement that her approach to staff management had been flawed and potentially harmful to the institution's values and reputation. Ambassador al-Rashid's recovery progressed smoothly, aided by the exceptional medical care and the supportive environment that Maria and her colleagues provided. Before his discharge, he made a point of personally thanking not only Maria, but the entire nursing staff for their dedication and professionalism. He also requested a formal meeting with Dr. Blackwood to commend the hospital's nursing program. The final chapter of this remarkable story came when Ambassador al-Rashid announced that his country would be significantly expanding its participation in the medical exchange program with St. Tipican, Catherine's Medical Center. He specifically cited the exceptional quality of the hospital's nursing staff, particularly their combination of technical competence and human compassion, as a model that his country's medical institutions hoped to emulate. Maria returned to her regular duties in the pediatric ward, carrying with her the satisfaction of having been vindicated and the knowledge that her simple act of treating everyone with equal respect had ultimately led to expanded opportunities for international medical cooperation. Timothy, now fully recovered, received his long-awaited storybook, along with Maria's gentle reminder that treating everyone with kindness and respect was always the right choice, regardless of the consequences. The story of the mocked handshake had become a testament to the power of human dignity and professional integrity, proving that simple acts of courtesy and respect could indeed change lives in ways no one could have predicted.